All right, we're back now. You've probably heard that question so many times. Can't we all just get along? Well, the answer actually might be yes, if you look at some of the new numbers out suggesting that we Americans agree far more than we disagree on the country's fundamental values. This is new polling in from the Associated Press. It shows Democrats and Republicans in agreement on freedoms, and, things like freedom of speech, the right to vote, equal protection under the law, and the right to privacy. So we wanted to see if we can get our panel today to kind of come together. Nan Hayworth, very agreeable person, former Republican Congresswoman from the state of New York. Ameshia Cross as well, Democratic strategist, former Obama campaign advisor. So do either one of you have an issue with this? Nan, you first. So look at you. You're not supposed to have to think about it. Do we agree more than we disagree? Because we do so many segments on how divided we are and how we hate each other. What do you say about this?
Well, I don't think we hate each other. We shouldn't. I think, yes, there is broad agreement, Connell. I think the challenge becomes how we define those things. And I think that's where a lot of the difficulties have come in. Not only how we define them, especially things like freedom to vote or, ballot access, that kind of thing. And then how we honor those goals in policy.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of the divides come in. And we still have a lot of work to do in those regards.
No, I think that's a fair kind of assessment of it, because it speaks to what your own values are, but also your political persuasion is and how it works into those values. I would say this, Ameshia, and you can weigh in on that same question that I asked Nan, but where we diverge the most is also interesting in this polling, and we can put this up from the AP. It's on guns, on the right to bear arms. And that was the biggest gap that they saw, 37% overall. And you look at the gap there between Republicans and Democrats, 60% Republican, 19% Democrats, in terms of their feelings overall on the right to bear arms. So that speaks about the big differences we have. What would you say, though, Ameshia, about whether we're more alike or more different or more agreeable versus disagreeable?
Well, I think that last graph points more to Democratic voter sentiments to the rise in gun violence and upset that we've seen around mass gun violence and shootings, and what those massive shootings have meant to people across this country, and wanting to see common sense gun reforms. But I agree with my fellow panelists here, who I consider a friend as well. We can be from separate sides of the aisle and want to see change. The way we get to that change, I think, is vastly different depending on the policy. But I don't think that, irrespective of what we see in cable news circles, I think that people aren't as disagreeable as some of those circles would like to believe.
Yeah, probably
and that
not.
We all have some common goals we want to reach.
Yeah, we don't want to ruin our reputation today and do too much on how you guys agree. So enough of this, so we can move on and talk about where we disagree and get a good fight going. So people still think the same of us. It's interesting, if you talk about the presidential race, if you just ask people about issues, number one. So we'll start there, and then we'll talk about how Biden and Trump are approaching this differently. What are the most important issues? The economy there and jobs, 85%. Healthcare is big, which we'll talk about more in a moment, 83%. Now, what are the other big issues we'd like to highlight? Abortion, certainly 58%. Immigration, the same at 58%. Why? Put up the Axios piece from today where some big words here, but dystopian split screen, Axios says. Trump claiming bloodbath, Biden seizing on abortion. And the point here, and Ameshia, I'll start with you on this, is that each side is trying to kind of scare the other into saying that if your guy's elected, it's going to be a disaster. So as a Democrat, the Republican strategy is immigration. They say that's their issue. And if Biden stays in, it's a disaster. Does that issue scare you as a Democrat? What would you say about it?
No, what scares me as a Democrat is former President Trump basically calling migrants inhuman or unhuman, or referring to them in ways that are extremely derogatory, as murderers, as rapists, and the castigation he's done. I think there's a fear of that, specifically because it's hatred and it's xenophobic. I think that when we talk about immigration reform policy, that's a conversation we can have, and I would hope that we would have across both sides of the aisle and up the middle, quite frankly, because it's something that this nation has needed across at least the past 5 U.S. presidents, irrespective of party. And we got close to it with a bill that ended up getting blown up because of Donald Trump making a last-minute call and shaking things up, even though Republicans helped to design and orchestrate that immigration bill that would have reduced some of what we see at our southern border. But this is something we've been working on for quite some time, and the can's been kicked down the road administration after administration. It's time for Congress to take immigration reform seriously.
Well, thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.